Okay, we're live. Good afternoon. And
Good afternoon.
good afternoon, Professor Jonathan Deacon. Really excited that, that we've got to do this session with each other today.
I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be fun, actually.
I think our biggest challenge is going to be to try and stick to 20 minutes on this session. Is our biggest challenge we're going to face. This is my third LinkedIn Live in the series. I think you've already watched the other two. So thank you for doing that. And I decided to start this because we're all working from home, and we all do have lots of conversations with our peers and colleagues, and some of those we share and some of them we don't. And I thought it'd be quite interesting just to go live with a number of the marketers that I speak to regularly to share some of the conversations that we have, parts of them. And today I wanted to share with people, we're going to talk about a couple of things, mainly trying to talk about your topic, your thoughts on 6 things a marketer might need to know. But we've, just to give people some background, we met a couple of years ago now.
It's one of those friendships where you just think, Luan's been in my life for I can't remember how long, and it's probably a lot shorter than it feels like at times. But we met, I suppose, officially through the Chartered Institute of Marketing.
Yes, which I think was a couple of years that you joined the board, of which I'm already a member. So we do meet in a formal capacity. But I've also been on site when we could go on site to the University of South Wales a couple of times, doing some guest lectures for your students. And then working with you, I became a visiting fellow in November last year. So we are continuing to work together as part of our conversations.
And we are honoured and blessed, to be honest, to have you as a visiting fellow, because for viewers today who don't know the full story about Luan, is that she's a real innovator and instigator of the use of a lot of very interesting and new, not technology, but just how we're applying this stuff. And I think now, as you rightly say, in a period of lockdown, and I'm now talking about how we exercise our businesses out of the lockdown into the next stage, into a recovery stage, and that's going to be blinking hard. We're going to exit this and enter straight away a period of recession, and businesses need as many tools as they possibly can have to navigate that issue, and the sort of stuff that you do, and more in particular the way that you communicate that, I think is of particular value to companies, because it can be a minefield of techies and technology, and you very eloquently kind of move around that and just show people what you can use this stuff for and how you apply it. And that's great. So all credit to you. So you're a worthy visiting fellow of the university, and it's been a joy to enable that and make that happen.
Thank you. I think we could end the live there. Be done. But seriously, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. We didn't set that bit of the live up at all. We did some prep, but we didn't cover that. But one thing that I wanted to talk about, because it is something that we do talk about before we get into the 6 things, is very much in these sessions we've been talking about that importance more so than ever about going back to marketing basics and fundamentals, which of course is what you teach students before they go into our real world. And as a huge lover of coffee, and you're a lover of coffee as well, because we've been drinking the same coffee for a while. You have a wonderful analogy of marketing and coffee. So I will probably start using this in the future. So I would like to correctly attribute it to you. So if you could share it with us first before we go into those 6 things.
So this kind of, I suppose, so my background has, I'm not a career academic as such, although I've spent shockingly the last 20 years in academia. But prior to that, I was in business, and I founded a number of companies, and I grew a number of companies, and we had management buyouts and all that kind of stuff. And I was a consultant and consulted for some coffee brewing equipment companies too in the past. Now, through that practitioner era that I was in, and as you know, you've alluded to, I sit as a non-exec on a number of companies still, and so on. So there's still that element of being in touch with real business, if you like.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is with business, which I think is really quite interesting, is that there's a whole kind of view from academia where we sit there sometimes and we think, oh, why don't companies use this latest tool or this latest kind of concept or model? Why aren't they using it? Well, they must be very, very bad at marketing. And my PhD was all about trying to find out, well, what does that kind of mean in the real world? And there's an awful lot of companies out there, smaller companies, middle-sized companies, that do appalling marketing, but they're massively successful. And the reason why they do appalling marketing is because they don't do the marketing that you read in a textbook. They do stuff that is genuine, proper understanding of what marketing means. And so over the years, I came up with this analogy of a cup of coffee, and I have my piece of paper here to draw it.
Yeah, just draw.
So it's based on, when we go into our local Costa Bucks kind of establishment, and we say, can we have a cappuccino, please? And they say, yeah, certainly. So they make a cappuccino, and the cappuccino looks a bit like this. And on the top of the cappuccino, we have all of the lovely frothy milk,
some chocolate powder, maybe.
Chocolate powder on the top, and it looks fab, doesn't it? A little pretty picture in the top. But actually, what a cappuccino is based on is the quality of the espresso that sits at the bottom. That's where we get the true flavor of that coffee. That gives us the coffee hit. Now, in my world, this up here is all that stuff that we get continuously. New models, books about new models. I've got the latest kind of idea about marketing stuff. And what we need to know in marketing is that bit at the bottom, which is what do we know about that fundamental? Because that doesn't change.
No.
In all of the years that I've been a practicing marketer and been involved in companies of all sorts of sizes, growing companies, starting companies, the fundamentals of marketing remain the same. And we in marketing forget those at our cost if we're not particularly careful.
Okay. Writing that
so
down.
You want to know
to
what
take notes. Can you send me that picture? And we'll frame it. Frame it as a LinkedIn Live.
Everybody. There we go.
Thank you. I'll do that as our screenshot later. Okay, so we've got 12 minutes. If we're going to stick to time, you've got 6 things to think about. So less than 2 minutes a thing that we need to know.
So the espresso at the bottom is made up of pretty much these 6 things. These are the things that we shouldn't ever forget about. Number 1, marketers need to have an understanding of and a real interest, whatever size company you run, and most companies do understand this. We need to know about psychology, the psychology of the individual, who buys what from us and why do they buy it. If we don't know that basic equation or the answer to that basic question, we're probably in trouble. Why do people buy from us? What value are they extracting out of that purchase? So it's that psychological piece. We need to understand that.
It's all about people, isn't it? It's people.
Business is a people business. It's not about a business doing something with a bunch of people. It's people doing something with another load of people. It's a people business. So we need to understand that bit. The next piece down is that we need to understand something about sociology. So if we got psychology, which is about the individual, sociology is about the group, about the comings together of people. And we in marketing and particularly with the digital platforms and the social media platforms, we need to understand about how influence works. Who influences who? Why does that work? Why is that, of particular, interest to us? So we need to understand that piece as well. So the influencer piece.
It's kind of widening it out, isn't it, all the time?
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget, influence works in a number of ways. It can be negative or positive, but it can also be, a very personal influence, what we call a personal contact network. So it could be, you influence me on coffee, for instance, a brand of coffee that you've recently started. I might then influence a wider non-personal contact network through talking about your coffee on LinkedIn, for instance. People I don't know personally, but listen to or read what I write. So you have that psychology, individual, sociology, the group. How does that work? Group dynamics.
Yeah.
And then we have anthropology. Anthropology is the study and an interest in culture and the cultures of people. Now we're living in a flat world that is connected more by social media than it is by anything else. There's more similarity between the people that live in London and Paris and New York and Rome than there is between those that live in London and Cardiff. There's connectivity around the globe, cultural connectivity between the millennials, the Gen Z generation. So we have to understand which culture are we attempting to offer value into. So again, that understanding of that cultural dimension, really important. Do they use social media? Take my dear old dad, he's 86. He doesn't use social media. He still uses traditional forms. But actually, he purchases things. He makes purchases. He invests in things. So there's a he's a valuable customer to somebody in a different type of way. But what do we understand about that? So you've got those three things which are really solid in there, and then we move on to things like an understanding of economics and how the economy has changed. When I studied economics first, it was about the economics of supply and demand, elasticity and inelasticity. Now those are things you can look up online and it'll tell you what they mean, but actually we are now in a situation where it's the economics of behavioral economics.
Yes.
How do we influence? What does that make? What difference does that make? How about giving away things for free? Firewalls, Prime, Amazon Prime type of developments. These are all economic mechanisms. And at this point in time, coming out of COVID, moving into a post-COVID world where what I term, and I borrowed the term from elsewhere, but firms of endearment, those firms that care and show a level of empathy for their markets, those companies are going to do well, and that's going to change their economic model, as does delivering things online, for instance. So there's a whole range of new economic models. Then we talk about strategy. So just as a reminder, we've got psychology, sociology, anthropology, we've got economics, and we've now got a thing about strategy. What does strategy mean? Strategy used to be, when I studied it first, the art of war, Sun Tzu. It's aggressive, it's adversarial, the language of it is very macho. In the last 20 years, we've seen a switch to a very much more softer, more feminized approach to strategy, which is about communication, connectivity, collaboration, co-opetition, working together. These are all feminine or feminized approaches, and we see that the tools that we now have, social networks, more connected world, those types of tools that we're using lend themselves to that approach to strategy. Who would have thought we would work with our competitors to achieve a better value outcome for our communities? We're seeing that all over the place at the moment. I mean, what a fantastic thing that we're seeing, how companies are working together who previously wouldn't have, to create ventilators or hand sanitizer or whatever it might be. Let's hope that
Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
And there is a part of that which is absolutely true, where the future and successful companies in the future will be those that have a social purpose,
Yeah.
not purely a commercial or a shareholder purpose. That social purpose, social good, is going to become ever more valued by us in this new world. And it's not so new, actually, because turmoil has always been there in business. This is just an amplified version of turmoil that we're going through. So you got your 5 things there, and then I come on to the one that I spend probably a lot of my time now looking at and doing, and that's creativity.
Yeah.
Bill Bernbach, the great advertising guru of the 1960s, he's the kind of guy that you would that was used as a kind of an example in Mad Men, that Madison Avenue 1960s type stuff. Well, Bill Bernbach said in the 1960s that creativity was the last legal, unfair advantage you could take over your competitors, and it's the same today as it was then. Creative thinking. How do we do something different that has meaning? And to kind of boil that down a little bit, we're not talking about can you do a pretty picture, can you put an advertisement together that looks neat. We're talking about an approach to business which is number one, human-centered, and secondly, based on design thinking. So we use that design thinking approach where we try and solve a problem with some creative thinking, and then we kind of prototype that, test it out on part of the market. But through all of that, we're understanding the human condition, the human-centered approach, which takes us right back to psychology.
Yeah. And thank you. What for me that's so wonderful is they are, without even realizing it, the 6 topics that I studied many years ago. And I just think that importance of going back to those, and some of this I'm nodding and scribbling it down, even though it's kind of like, I know this, but just to have that reminder. And I think we'll just finish off with kind of, the situation we're in now and what marketers need to be doing and what we all need to be doing is just taking that step back, which we've been forced to do to a certain extent, and whether that's not necessarily a bad thing to make us revisit some of these activities, the inertia that we had for change, is to actually, have these models or these words in our heads to make sure that we do focus on our customer, how they've changed, and the economics and what's going on, and change your business models. But ultimately, that how do we present this differently? What's unique about us? We do need that creative.
Yeah, McKinsey have just done a piece of research, and they've just released it, and it's well worth a read if you can look at it. And it focuses on one thing in particular, and it that actually has a resonance with what I've just done with my 6 big things, and that's about how do we mitigate risk for people. So whatever business we're in, can we mitigate? Can we take out risk? Because risk is going to be a central point in every consumer market, every industrial market moving forward. If I'm an airline, how do I take out the risk of traveling? How do I take that from the consumer? If I'm a supermarket, if I'm any form of interaction, can I take that risk out of it? Now, those companies that are online, of course, at the moment don't have risk. But if you're delivering something, my delivery guys come up my driveway, and they're now dropping things off, ringing the doorbell, and running.
Yes.
So how can we engineer and protect? How can we engineer risk mitigation and protect our customers? Yeah, that's going to be number one.
Just to take that step back and look at all of these factors as we're going forward.
Yeah.
And we're, to start wrapping up, we're working on that with the University of South Wales, aren't we? And some content about looking at these factors, and bite-size learning and information sharing is kind of where it all comes down to, that collaborating.
And part of our civic mission is to reach out to the business community and say, look, we've got some stuff here that you might find useful, and you can have it for free. because it's going to benefit us all.
And I think we've all got to share what we're doing and what we're thinking and learning, because this is new. Even though that, you know, all the articles like go back to recession thinking, it was still quite a while ago. So I think the more that we do collaborate and share and have conversations with people that we might sit next to, or would normally sit next to, or just in different worlds, I think it's going to just help all of us develop the thinking and support that we need right now. Yeah,
if I can just pinch a 20 seconds, and back in 2007, 2008, I started working with some companies in the financial services area to come out of recession, and we used an analogy at the time of the racing boat, you know, the yacht skimming through the waves, and it enters a huge storm. And if you're on that boat, if you're a crew member or certainly the captain on that boat, you've got a couple of choices. You can take the sails down, you can go down below decks, pull the hatch over your head, get into your bunk, strap yourself in, and just, you know, see the storm through and hope that when you come out of the storm that your boat is intact and your crew members can still operate. That's number one. Number two is you can put the spinnaker up, you can harness the energy in that storm, and you can begin to use that to your benefit to come out of the storm ahead of everyone else, better prepared, and probably feeling a lot better about things. And I think we have that choice in companies now. Again, do you bury your head and hope it all goes away, or do you think about how can I change my operation and make the most of this opportunity? Rather than seeing it as a problem, we see it as an opportunity. Yeah.
As ever, super inspired by speaking to you, and my head's racing. So I'm sorry that we had to limit that to 20 minutes, but the feedback is people like this bite size at lunchtime. So a huge thank you. I'm sure we'll pick this up again later. Thank you to those that have watched live. If there's any comments, we can't see them as they're live, so we will be jumping on our LinkedIn profiles this afternoon and having a look. Of course, you may be watching this as a recording, so thank you for watching it later. Next week, I will be talking with Dave Stevens, who runs the Business Marketing Club. So we'll be talking about marketing, but with a very B2B focused mindset next week. So thank you again, and thank you, Jonathan. See you soon. Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.